Welcome to Women of the Wild,
where education and opportunities are key,
and friendships are made to last a lifetime.
Did you get him?
You think we got him? You think we got him? We got him. You said that yesterday.
All right, Skylar, what do we got here?
We've got a nice looking rip-off.
Yeah. Oh, there she is. Woo! You dropped our gray ghost.
Give me a hug.
Hi there, this is Felicia Marie with Women of the Wild. We are here today on our podcast with Teri Smith from Wyoming. Hi, Teri. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
So we got connected through one of the mutual companies that we both work with, which is Extreme Backcountry. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and your involvement with them?
Well, I'm pretty new. I've only been in the group for about a week and a half. I actually had met Don, and who's the CEO, and he invited me out hunting, and we just kind of connected with the hunting, and I've learned a lot from him, as well as we've shared different hunt areas. We hunt the same area, but we've hunted different aspects of it.
Okay.
And
So-
just the way that we got along well, he invited me into the extreme backcountry.
So what types of animals are you guys hunting?
Right now, the primary is elk and a mule deer.
Okay.
And then I'm also hunting the antelope as well.
Oh, the pronghorn are
Yes.
that's a super interesting animal. We don't have them out here. We're in Michigan. I'm in Michigan.
Okay.
So it's always one that it's always piqued my interest. I've always heard that they smell like Fritos. Is that true?
Not Fritos, no.
Okay. But they have a
Um,
unique smell, right?
They do. They actually smell a lot like domesticated goats.
Okay.
They have that kind of gamey goat smell to them.
Mhm.
And their nickname is actually a speed goat.
Yes. They're fast.
They are very fast.
They're one of the fastest animals in North America, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they are. I mean, I know they can run over 45 miles an hour for short bursts.
Right. Yeah, because I know I do a lot of hunting in South Africa, and you got your cheetahs and your impalas over there, and I think that for me, when I try to tune it in, I start comparing an impala to an antelope, an antelope, but a pronghorn, that are in that antelope species, and they're just such an intriguing animal. For me personally, I think that they're very interesting animals.
They truly are, and they're beautiful to watch them run. And their habits are interesting, just because it changes, throughout the year, like a lot of the wild game do.
Yes,
You
and
know,
they're a challenging animal to hunt, if I'm not mistaken, right? Their vision and everything.
incredibly, they're very, very skittish. Um, it's very challenging, especially with archery.
Hmm.
And most of your shots on rifle are going to be probably right around the 200-yard mark.
Oh, wow. What are your typical shots with archery?
Uh, if I have a good place to set up, I can get into 50 yards, but it's a challenge. Let me tell you, it's quite the challenge to get in on those suckers, because you really have to have a good blind. You
Mhm.
definitely have to have a good scent lock.
Okay.
If they smell you or hear you or see you, they are gone.
Okay. So are you doing you set up a blind, you go sit and you wait like you do for whitetail?
Actually, to be honest with you, when I try to find like a natural blind. I kind of try. One of the things I do is I watch their migratory habits, where they're grazing through, where are they running through, where are their exits. And we have a lot of sagebrush here, and I will literally sit down in the sage in an area close to where they're running through.
Which I'm sure
And
helps mask your smell as well to be surrounded in that sage.
it does, but then you have to watch out for the ticks.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess that's true in
So,
any type of tall grass, right?
yep, tall grass. They really like sage as well, but I try to just, if I'm using my bow and I'm actually shooting a crossbow,
Okay.
um, I'm gonna try to get back into compound, but right now I'm still with a crossbow. And it's just I find a place in the morning or in the evening, and I try to watch their patterns, and you can kind of glass where they're at and see if they're going to come through that zone, and then you can set up for it.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of fun though. The
Is.
challenge is always the best part.
It is, and that's the fun thing. And if you have an area that you can put a game camera out months in advance, that helps. It otherwise you just kind of have to really get out there and watch and see what they're doing.
Right. Just
And
scout their pattern.
yep, and even walking through just to see where they run.
Hmm.
'Cause they seem to have like a favorite place to run to.
Now, is
And
that like water is what pulls them and attracts them, or is it like certain vegetation aside from the sage?
the water, they definitely want to watch the water mounts, or
Okay.
the different water holes.
Hmm.
And I say mounts because they will go on these ranches. A lot of people have the self-watering systems for horses,
Hmm.
and the antelope will actually find those and they'll come in on those. So sometimes you can even use a barn because you'll have a self-watering system there, and they'll find that and they'll come to the water holes.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's a very interesting hunt that I think most people, especially women, haven't had the chance to experience yet. And I think that there's a lot of education to that style of hunting. But you go beyond that. You do elk, you do a lot of like mountain style hunting as well, correct?
I do a lot of hiking. I do some road hunting. I'm getting back into the hiking aspects now. I had a knee injury a few years ago, and I've recovered from that now.
Hmm.
But I like to get out there in the wilderness and get into the timber and the back country. And whether I'm hiking or using my horse, because I'll take the horse into the back country as well.
Oh, I love that. I know you and I had previously discussed that, and that's like one of the big hunts on my bucket list is to take horses into the mountains and just completely backcountry style and no amenities and just go live it. I think
Exactly. I'm
it's
good in the
like
back country for about 3 days, and then I'm like, no, I think it's time for that hot shower.
the shower is what always gets me. Like we did a Texas hunt in the mountains back in March, and we were out there for 6 days with zero amenities at all. And we ended up taking one of the days where we had to drive an hour and a half to a local truck stop just for us all to go take showers.
I completely understand. Um,
Yeah.
there are
So,
some really beautiful areas in the Bighorns, and if you get into, it's really important if you're going to hunt backcountry in the Bighorns, you really need to ride that country all summer long and watch the patterns of the elk.
okay.
And you can get really in there deep, and you're going to have to pack your elk out, obviously, because
Hmm.
you can get in there 20 miles and nobody's around, and it's awesome because it's just you and nature.
Right.
And but you do got to watch the elk patterns because they have their own little movements throughout the summer, and as it starts cooling off they'll start moving around too. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun to kind of get out there and see what they're doing, and it gives you an excuse to go ride your horse deep country. And
I love that.
yeah, so but
So we kind of went backwards on this. I'd love to dive into you. Like how you grew up, how you got into hunting. Would you mind telling us how that all started for you and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Well, it actually started off, my whole family hunts. And my first memory hunting was probably when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And the whole family, we went out grouse hunting in the morning. And I can remember my first memory is sitting on my dad's lap and he was letting me drive the truck, or, I thought I was driving the truck.
Mhm.
And we were out grouse hunting. And that's my first memories hunting. And then it evolved into the deer hunting. And I grew up in Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula. And we would actually go to Eastern Washington up into the Lake Chelan area to hunt mule deer. And I just grew up with hunting, and our main food source was deer. And then over the years, it's progressed. I moved around state to state, and I always had a drive to Montana. I just had that feeling that Montana, Wyoming, somewhere out here is where I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got in here to Wyoming, I actually had to teach myself how to elk hunt, because that was something that the guys did in the family, not the girls.
Right.
And I got here and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to do this. And, I asked questions with friends. And, back then I dated a cowboy and he knew the area and showed me the migration patterns of the elk. And my first year elk hunting in Wyoming was me out hiking 6, 8 miles in an area that I knew the elk were in.
Mm-hmm.
And I
And just
didn't
figuring it out.
just figuring it out. And I didn't get an elk my first year. Actually, it was the first 2 years I didn't get an elk. My third year, I took a 6-point bull elk with a crossbow at 50 yards.
Oh, wow.
And that was my very first elk kill, and it was my very first bow kill. And that really got me excited. And in the last 8 years, I've really progressed into a more avid hunter than I was even when I was younger. I felt it was something that I really enjoyed, and it put meat in the freezer, and every aspect of the hunting and the processing and, putting the meat in the freezer and then enjoying it over the year was very rewarding. Yeah,
Having the ability to sustain for yourself is huge. And an elk, it provides so much meat.
it does. And I'm hoping to put one on the ground this year. I've been into the elk this year. I just haven't gotten one in the crosshairs.
Okay. So,
So
and I know that Don and I were just talking about that it's been kind of an off season for you guys over
it
there.
really has. They're moving differently. They didn't really get into bugling much this year. And
Because they're
and
very
Dawn,
typically vocal, correct?
they are, especially when they're in rut. The temperatures start getting cold. They're trying to round up their cows. They get really, really vocal. And, we've got times what we call it the midnight madness.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just bugle after bugle for hours on end. And it usually seems to be in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's funny.
It is. And this year I never heard it. I only heard a few elk bugle at all this year. And then Dawn is actually teaching me how to cow call, and that's been a whole new experience. All these years, I've never called an elk.
Mm-hmm.
I've always just hunted them,
And just
I would
pressed your luck.
I just trusted my luck, and right place, right time. My first bull elk that I got was actually horseback. So, we were actually on our way back to camp and we spotted the elk moving down a meadow. It was changing its afternoon bed, and tied the horses up, snuck up where we were across from it, and I put an arrow in it.
I love that.
So
That's a really challenging hunt. A lot of women and people in general don't really get to experience the ins and outs. Like Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, they're some of my favorite landscapes. The Rocky
Yeah.
Mountains and the open plains, like it's a beautiful aspect.
it truly is. Elk hunting here in Wyoming, especially in the northeast corner here, if you're hunting the bighorns, you better prepare for a lot of up and down as far as hiking and elevation changes.
Mm-hmm.
Last weekend we were 9,000 feet of elevation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then right now we're in between archery and rifle season, and we're going into our rifle season here in a week and a half. And then the elevation is going to change yet again, because it could be 6,000 feet. It could still be back to the 9,000 feet. It just depends kind of on the weather,
Mhm.
because the weather will really move our elk around.
Like
It's not
push,
just, yeah,
does
it'll
it push them
down.
up or down more with the weather?
The bad weather will push them down.
Okay.
They've had a lot of human pressure lately, which has moved them around some. That what part of what made them what we call going deep, and
Mhm.
they'll find those holes that nobody wants to climb into.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
we
like,
have a girl on staff that she just got back. She was 21 days in the mountain, and her the gentleman she was with got an elk, but she left without her tag, without filling her tag, and that's what she had said. She said there was a lot of human pressure.
well, there was a lot more this year than I've ever seen. People have figured out that they can hunt with the crossbows, and anybody can shoot with a crossbow, and we had quite a bit more traffic. In Wyoming, you can go from bow season into rifle season on the same tag,
Mhm.
unless you put in for what they call an archery only tag. And archery only tag gets you in 2 weeks earlier than anybody else, but you can only shoot the bow season.
Okay. And crossbows are still part of that?
And crossbows are still part of that.
Okay.
And
Because I know some states have regulations where they exclude a crossbow as an actual like compound.
exactly. Some places I know that you have to use your crossbow during rifle season. And here in Wyoming, the crossbows are still allowed under the archery season.
Okay.
So we've had a lot more pressure this year, and I'm sure that had a factor in moving how the elk were acting.
Mhm.
They definitely, when there was a higher pressure of human activity on the mountain, the elk got really quiet. And they've learned that when there's more people and it's hunting season, they got to be quiet or they're going to be found.
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, we got into elk almost every single day that we were out hunting, but it was such brushy, thick country. It was really hard to get that clear shooting zone to find one of them. And trying to get them to step into that was a challenge because they just weren't answering calls.
And that's more from the human pressure than the natural like environment pressures of like the weather changes.
This year I think it was a combination of weather and human.
Okay.
They just weren't in their normal habits, I guess is a way to put it. The
Mhm.
temperatures were a touch warmer than we've usually had. We did see snow on one of the days, and we had some stormy weather, but it just wasn't quite as cold in it as it has been in years past.
So what is the
We're
typical temperature that you're looking for when you're elk hunting?
25 degrees.
Oh, okay. That's more my element. I like cold. So what is the current temp where you're saying it's too warm?
We were hunting in 40-degree temperatures for the most part on the mountain.
Okay.
So
Which is still chilly for most, but for elk hunting, you want it colder.
it seems that they talk more when it's colder.
Okay.
At least that's been my experience of what I've noticed.
Right.
Some people may disagree with me, but I love hunting the elk in the cold and the snow and the frost. It just seems like you hear them more. You know, that 25 to 35 degree temperature is what I'm used to.
Right. Well, and there's just something about a blood trail in the snow that I don't know. For
That makes
me,
it
that it makes it so much easier, but it's so much more fun.
But it's interesting you say that because I've actually run into a problem one time where the snow wasn't getting stained. I didn't find
Mhm.
the red blood trail until the next day
Okay.
because the blood was warm and it was just melting the soft snow and it would go down and you couldn't see the trail.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Right. And then the next day, then you see all the red drops and or hours later. So I've had that issue.
Right when it's fresh to just drop all the way to the ground and then it almost hides it.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't think of that aspect. I've never encountered that.
I've only ever had it happen once, and I just kind of scratched my head going, what am I missing?
Right. Like I know I hit him. I know he's bleeding good. Where is it at?
Right. Well, there was plenty of blood on the snow where he got hit, but those
Mhm.
drops were, like I said, just went all the way through. And it wasn't until later what I realized was happening, and then I was looking for just the holes in the snow.
Mhm.
But I've seen times where it doesn't stain the snow, and it's
Now, how
crazy.
deep was the snow when that happened?
Uh, Probably about 8-10 inches.
Oh wow, then that's hard on your body to trek through.
It is. It'll wear you out in a heartbeat. Um, I'm still learning to snowshoe, and I haven't had to snowshoe during elk season yet.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you what, if we get the snow this winter during rifle, I will definitely have the snowshoes. It does make it a
Now,
little bit easier.
is that hard on the horses to come up in that kind of weather?
It can. Like right now, I've already pulled the shoes off my horse because I wasn't planning on using her for hunting season.
Okay.
I just, when you're out hunting horseback, you really need to have 2 to 3 people.
Mhm.
And the reason being is there's so much that can happen in the back country. You need to have backup if you're going to go hunting horseback.
Sure.
And not having the other people to hunt with me that have horses, I won't go out alone. Now I'll
Yeah,
hunt on foot. I'll hunt on foot alone, but I won't hunt horseback alone.
yeah, I can understand the security system of having others with you of the safety. I would assume like, if anything happened and you were to be, bucked off your horse or you or your horse were to get injured and you're by yourself, that's a very tasking thing to get you back to safety or one of you, medical help if needed.
Exactly. So when it comes, since I didn't have anybody that hunts horseback right now, you know, I just took the shoes off of her.
Mhm.
But like next year, if I can get a group of people together that have horses so that we can all hunt horseback, we can always pair off.
Mhm.
But definitely, you just don't want to be out there horseback hunting alone.
Yeah, I can
Because,
understand that.
you got mountain lions to consider, you got the occasional wolf to consider, you've got the bears still to consider because they're still out.
Mhm.
And all of those things can spook your horse.
Sure.
Like
Now,
my
what
horse,
what makes you comfortable to go alone on foot versus with your horse?
um, usually just because I'm not going as deep into the country.
Mhm.
Um, and I have enough skills to stay out in bad weather if I do injure myself. And I always let somebody know where I'm going approximately, the same general area, when to expect me back. If I'm not back, this
Mhm.
is where you need to look.
Okay.
And I always have emergency stuff in my pack that I carry with me, matches, starting stuff. If I get knocked out, that's a different problem. But um,
Right.
but if I get caught out there if I sprain an ankle and I get caught out there, I do have emergency stuff that I can survive the night, even for cold
Mhm.
weather. And like I said, if I'm not back by a certain time, somebody's going to be looking for me.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. Now, you said that you grew up with a lot of grouse hunting. Do you still do any upland?
A little bit. I I've never been the greatest with a shotgun. Part of it I found out was because the shotgun I had was actually too long for me.
Mhm.
Because I inherited it from my grandfather, so it's an old 12 gauge, and I love it. But it really is too long. It's almost as tall as I am.
Oh, wow.
So I actually did buy myself a 20 gauge recently in the last couple of years, but I haven't gotten out there shooting it like to get comfortable with it.
Mhm.
There again, I haven't had anybody to really hunt with. And when you're
Sure.
a single person hunting, some things are still intimidating.
Absolutely.
So, I'm hoping that, getting connected in with the extreme backcountry, it's going to open more doors as far as, people to hunt with, as well as learning things, and I can support them. And even some of their sponsors, I'm trying new products. and
Mhm.
I'm finding it's working really, really well.
What are some of the products that you've tried so far?
The Upwind, the scent lock,
Mhm.
I had great success with that this year where the elk they couldn't smell me at all. And I've used other products where I'd still get scented out.
Mhm.
Um, and as ladies, as you know, the scents are, we got the hair conditioner, we've got things that you do have to cover up.
Mhm.
Most guys don't think about conditioner, but I had long hair. I just recently cut my hair fairly short for me.
Mhm.
Um, but the scent lock stuff has worked really, really well where I am not getting tagged by being downwind of something and it's smelling me, even with other scent lock products. Um, I got so frustrated with some of the scent lock products in the past that I quit using them, and I actually went to using either like buck spray or cow estrus or something like that because it did a better job of masking me.
Right. And I've heard of like the mixing of is it vanilla extract and distilled water. Like I've heard people making their own, but I believe that Upwind, that their calculations with their scent masking smells was a little bit higher than some of the other companies, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
I believe you're right, and like I said, I'm blown away by the product itself.
Hmm.
It just did. I sprayed yesterday. In fact, just a side bit here. I took a good friend of mine out hunting, and she's never been hunting before, and she didn't have any of the scent lock stuff. And when we got out of the truck, I just sprayed her down with that Upwind. And I told her to even smell her own shirt, and she could no longer smell her fabric softener on her own shirt.
Well, that's fantastic. So, like here in Michigan, we have a little bit more dense of a population. So, scent
Hmm.
isn't really something that I'm super concerned about. But when we do hunts in areas that are a bit more remote, that's one thing that I tell people is like scent masking products only go so far because you need to be hunting a specific animal that you're going to need that. So for us here in Michigan, like our whitetail hunting, the people that are using it, I'm like, you're really just spending money
Right.
because these animals are used to people, they're used to the smell of a person. Now, when you're hunting remote areas like Wyoming, Alaska, I mean, even parts in Texas, if you're downwind, those animals are going to smell you if you're, showing up with your fabric softener, your Axe body spray. And I always tell people, the biggest thing is stop washing yourself in those high perfumed
Right.
deodorizers or shampoos because when you sweat, you're going to be sweating that out of your glands for a couple of weeks. So I always say
Oh,
like
yeah.
switch to something especially for women. I always suggest like herbal essence and stuff like that because if it's a more natural smell, you're already winning there that you're not going to have to try to get anything that's a heavy perfume out if you're using like more like floral natural smells to begin with. But where
Correct.
you're at, it's so remote that those animals aren't used to a person. So something as simple as, like you said, your hair conditioner could be a set off for them.
Exactly. And I actually have gone to using unscented most everything. Like even on my normal detergents and stuff, I try to find, the free and clear stuff where there's no dyes, no scents. And they still have a scent to them, but it's a lot lower.
Do you use that year round or just during hunting season on your
I
hunting
use it
clothes?
year round.
Okay.
The other is I actually do landscape maintenance and snow removal as a job.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, the fragrances, when you're working with plants all day long, some of those fragrances with the products will actually aggravate the insects
Oh, okay.
and they'll draw it into you. So I just use unscented stuff year round because I don't want to be bothered by the bugs.
And
So
that helps with that as well as
it
like
does.
a bug deterrent.
Yep. The
I never thought
perfumes,
of that.
the perfumes and all the conditioners and fabric softeners and everything will just attract some of those bugs right to you.
Yeah, I
And
can see that now and I've never even gave that a thought.
right. And then see, I also have honeybees on top of that. And I noticed some fragrances really aggravate my bees.
Oh,
And so I've just gone to using scent free on everything year round, and it keeps my bees calm. It keeps bugs away from me. And then it works for hunting as well.
I love
So,
the self-sustainability that you have, and we're going to dive into that a little bit.
okay.
But for right now, we're going to take a short break for our sponsors to listen in. So stay tuned because we have more to talk with Teri about, and check out our sponsors.
Spark that fire and passion for the great outdoors through the gift of reading and learning with your kids. Dr. Josh Farr's vivid storytelling will captivate and teach your little ones through books like The ABCs of Hunting, Let's Go Out and Play, and his latest book, coming soon, The ABCs of the Outdoors. Your kids will love the great stories and bright, colorful pictures as they learn about friendship, life, and nature. See all of Dr. Josh Farr's books at drjoshfarr.com. That's drjoshfarr.com.
Hey everyone, Andy from ACC Crappie Sticks. I want to tell you about our full line of vertical jigging and live scoping crappie rods. We have from 10 foot to 13 foot in mid-seat to rear seat, and available in cork and super grip handles to cover all of your vertical fishing and live scoping needs. Go to accrappiesticks.com. Thank you.
We would also like to thank RMC Custom Calls. You can find them at rmccustomcalls.com. Atlantic Coral Enterprise. You can find them at atlanticcoralenterprise.com. Rhino Land Safaris. Find them at rhinoland.co.za. Muzzy Pheasant Farms. Check them out at muzzypheasantfarms.com. Blast and Cast Guide Services. Look them up at blastandcastguideservices.com. Sawmill Creek Baits and Lures. Check them out at sawmillcreekbaitsandlures.com. Misguided. You can find Misguided on Facebook and on Instagram. Wicked 7 Outdoors. Go follow them over on Instagram and Facebook. Weeby Knives. Check them out at weebyknives.com. Stonehouse Digital Consulting at stonehouseddigitalconsulting.com. Livingston County Pheasants Forever. Check them out at livingstoncountypheasantsforever.com. Dreamcatcher Charters. Check them out on Facebook and on Instagram. And last but not least, UVA, Ultimate Veteran Adventures. Check it out at ultimateveteranadventures.org. Thanks so much for listening, and back to the podcast.
So welcome back. Thank you for listening to the first half of this and checking out our sponsors. We're going to continue our conversation with Teri. We're going to dive into your self-sustainability because you do a lot. I talked to you earlier. You said you're building a greenhouse, that you have a processing station that you're putting in your house, and you have your honeybees. So can you tell me about that with you? Because self-sustainability is something I feel that a lot of people have kind of gotten away from, but in the last 2 years, there's been a big influx of people being more interested in that. And I know for me personally, in my household as a single mom of 2 kids, like being as self-sustainable as possible is a big thing. So like big herb gardens, art gardens out back, harvesting our own meat, but you go beyond that and you really dive into that. So I'd love to hear how you live your life.
It's actually been a really interesting process to bring me where I am today. I grew up gardening and canning food with my mom, and then hunting and stuff with my dad, which was a whole family affair. And I've always loved gardening and plants and everything else. And over the years, I just want to know where my food is coming from. And so I'm just growing more of my own stuff. And Wyoming's got a unique climate, so you have a really short growing season. And I've just figured ways to tweak it where I can extend my, growing season. And like you said, I'm now got a greenhouse that's going together so that I can get stuff started even earlier. I actually have gone to a raised bed system. because I can create mini greenhouses with them. And then you get the heat from the sunshine on the sides of the boxes, which helps warm the soil up sooner. So
What
you can get
types of
those.
plants are you growing in Wyoming?
Well, I try to grow whatever I'm going to use the most. Now, like early in the season, I'll do more spinach
Mm-hmm.
because it's more of a cold crop. So, like spinach, I'll do early in the season and then late in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like radishes and things like that. Um, I have raspberries, I have strawberries, I have a full herb garden, and I've got a lot of medicinal herbs in it as well. Trying to think of all the different things. I'm trying grapes this year. They were doing really good until the squirrels ate them all.
Oh no. Yeah, our big problem is the birds. The birds tend to really get at them, so we throw nets over ours and we tie CDs into them, like the old CD discs,
Yep.
because that like rainbow magnification will kind of keep some of the birds away, but we drape them with nets and then throw like tie CDs onto them.
That's cool. That's a great idea. I haven't had a great success with the squirrels. There's not a whole lot that deters them.
Oh, for sure.
So, but I've got, a various range of tomatoes, a various range of peppers. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to get the greenhouse completed so I can get actually my pepper plants put inside the greenhouse to keep them going for another month or two.
Mm-hmm.
But tomatoes, like this year, I grew, I think, 12 tomato plants. And I was able to put up about 24 pints of tomato, either stewed tomatoes, tomato sauce, salsa. Actually, I think I have more than the 24 pints, but well, just this morning I did a batch of salsa verde. I mean, that
Oh,
was
yum.
yeah, right out of the gate. It was still dark and I'm going outside and picking peppers so I can get my salsa verde done.
I love that. Yeah,
So
homemade, like the stewed tomatoes, the sauces, the salsas, like I don't think that there's anything store-bought that compares to those. There's some things that you consume that the fresher they are, the better. And I think that what you're doing is absolutely amazing. I think that it's fantastic. With your peppers, are you doing bell peppers? Are you doing other types of peppers?
I'm doing mostly hot peppers.
Okay.
Yeah, in this year the seeds packaging had gotten messed up because I bought jalapeno seed peppers,
Mm-hmm.
and the peppers that I grew were not jalapenos. They turned out to be Hungarian wax, and I was like, that's interesting.
Oh.
But and I've heard that across a lot of different of the gardening forums. A lot of people had the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what happened with the seed packaging last year, but things got messed up. But yeah, I usually I have at least like 6 jalapeno peppers, and then I'll have a various other things. And I have shishitos and poblanos, and I've got one that's called a garden salsa, which I really like because it's very similar. It's a kind of like a cross between a hatch and a jalapeno.
Okay.
So it's got the heat of the jalapeno, but it kind of has that flavor of the hatch chili.
So
And it has
what you're
this
telling me is you like the real hot peppers.
I do. I like my
Yeah.
salsas medium hot. But then I also grow other peppers that are extremely hot. And what I do is I actually make a pepper spray out of them
Okay.
to keep, and I use it around my garden boxes to keep the rabbits off.
Oh, I've heard of doing that and like spraying to keep like deer out or even
Yeah,
domestic dogs in our area that people have done that to keep things at bay a little
exactly.
bit.
Yeah.
Does that
And
help with insects as well?
I haven't really noticed the insects aspect of the peppers, but it definitely keeps the rabbits out.
That's wonderful. And a great way to
So,
like resource something yourself instead of buying a product to do it with.
well, and there again, I know exactly what's going into it and I'm not getting chemicals. And it's not that I don't use chemicals, but I try to keep it as low as possible.
Sure. What
Um,
is your favorite thing to grow?
would probably be the peppers and tomatoes.
And that's your favorite to consume as well?
Yes. Well, I
Because
use it
see,
in everything. I do a lot of Italian and Mexican cooking. It's just, I love Cajun food. So a lot of that has more peppers and hotter stuff.
mhm.
So, but spaghetti and a lot of your Mexican stuff takes a lot of tomatoes. So I just grow a lot of tomatoes so I can put as much away as I can, so I'm not having to buy it.
Yeah, I don't personally eat like like a tomato, right? Like my son, my oldest, he'll eat a tomato like an apple, and he'll dip it in salt and pepper and just eat it like an apple.
Oh
I don't
my.
eat tomato, but like I'll make fried green tomatoes or like make it into salsas and sauces and stuff
Right.
like that. So tomatoes are one of like the biggest variety in my garden that I have. I think I have 7 or 8 different varieties of tomatoes, and there's at least 4 plants of each.
Okay.
And my son really likes the little cherry tomatoes. He puts them on almost everything. So we have a bunch of those. I want to say we have 6 of those plants, but
Right.
I probably have over 20 feet of raspberries
Yep.
across that grow, and then they grow up a vine that's like 10 foot tall. And that's one of my favorites because when I get the kids up in the morning before school, we'll go out and we'll pick a little bowl of raspberries and we'll sit and eat it with our breakfast. And
Isn't that
it's
the
that
best?
fun. Yes, it's wonderful when a garden can become interactive.
It really is. And I live close to a park. I've got a very unique property. I rent from my employer. It's a duplex. It's part of the company, and it's just a unique location because I actually live in the middle of Sheridan. I am like a block and a half off of Main Street,
Hmm.
and I have chickens in the backyard. I've got the gardens in the backyard. I hunt and I come bring it home. And I'll be skinning out an animal hanging in the backyard in the tree, and somebody will be walking in the park next door and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm skinning out an animal for, meat for the freezer." And then they'll ask questions, and it's kind of cool. And I'll invite people over and walk them through what I'm doing. And then they see the gardens, and that just brings on more questions. And a lot of it's younger, teenage girls, that 10 to, 14. And then they get interested in it, and then they start asking their parents about it. And even though Wyoming is more hunting friendly than some states,
Hmm.
there's still people that don't understand hunting.
Oh yes, and I feel like that's pretty much anywhere.
Right.
Like here it's still it was very taboo for a female to hunt growing up. And
Right.
just until I want to say last year, I don't think I knew a female that hunted within like my core group of friends. I was the only one until a year ago, and when we started Women of the Wild 2 years ago. Um, we really started introducing girls, and now like I have a core group of females that I can hunt with, but it's not something that is taught in schools. It's still very taboo. Like you said, like it was always something the men were allowed to do, but the girls weren't. I know that was something I experienced growing up was I was never allowed at deer camp. And once
Right.
I got into my teens, I was like, you know what, screw this. I want to do that. I'm going to make my own.
Good for
So
you.
that's how it all started. And the whole purpose of Women of the Wild is I don't ever want a female to feel like she doesn't have a place to be introduced to the outdoors. And with that platform, we're able to provide education in so many different aspects of hunting, gardening. We did a canning class last year that was actually instructed by the USDA. That we want to bring all of that to the forefront, and we want women to feel like they have a place. So when those girls are walking through that park and they're coming up and they're interested and intrigued, you've now sparked this interest for them that even if they go home and the parents are like, I don't know, that's not really what we want to do. We don't want to, instruct you to go that way. It's still lighting that fire within them that they're going to have interest. And maybe it might take a year or two, but they might find their place through some simple interaction like that. And you bringing them in being so friendly and giving them that instruction. So I think that's absolutely amazing that you do that and you take the time to invite them into your safe space and show them what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's really interesting to me that, you know, many more people aren't willing to do it that style of like, come here, I'll show you. Like that's what our
Right.
outdoor community needs. So I think it's fantastic you do that.
Well, and that's it. I'm always inviting my friends out to hunt with me, especially ladies.
Hmm.
Like my friend that I brought with me yesterday. I actually did get on a deer yesterday and she spotted it, which she did amazing for just her first time out. And she didn't actually hunt. She was just riding along to see the whole process.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I didn't get the deer because my bow misfired.
Oh no.
I had it in the crosshairs at 40 and I went to pull the trigger and it wouldn't fire. And I was like, you got to be kidding.
Oh.
And, so it was kind of one of those days. And then, I got back to the truck because she stayed with the truck and she goes, oh, you didn't get it. And I'm like, no, it's okay. It's not a problem. And we were actually driving out, checking other areas. And she goes, man, this is so unfortunate. You didn't get anything. We failed at hunting. And I had to turn and look at her. I said, we didn't fail at anything.
Mm-mm.
I said, to me, this is still a very successful hunt. It doesn't matter if I got something or not.
Right.
And she kind of looked at me funny and didn't understand. I was like, did we have a good time? She goes, well, yeah. I said, did you learn anything? And she goes, well, yeah. I said, then it's a successful hunt.
Absolutely.
And it got her thinking,
Yes. That's what it's all measured in, is the experience and the education. And I think so many people are so worried about, like, did I get the harvest? And
Right.
that's not what it's about. So I absolutely love that. That's my mentality through and through, is if you came out and you had a great time and you felt like you learned something, then we succeeded. It doesn't matter that there was a harvest, or, with birds, if it doesn't matter that we didn't put our limit on the ground. If you had an experience and you had a shot opportunity, or you even just got to see those birds work, or see a deer, like, to me, that's what the experience is about.
Exactly. And once I put it to her that way, it kind of changed her perspective. And I said, as long as you are the camaraderie and you're having fun and enjoying your time, and it doesn't matter if we put the meat in the freezer, it's still a successful hunt. Everybody
Absolutely.
puts so much strain on putting something on the ground. And if we took a step back from that and just enjoyed the time with other people and sharing, I think that there would be a lot better attitude out in the hunting world.
Absolutely. At like 1000% can't agree with that more. I always tell people, like, I don't even have to be the one to pull the trigger. I'll go help you pack. I'll go help you glass. Like, for me, I enjoy, this is silly, but I enjoy the suffering and the experience more than the actual harvest.
Exactly.
To me,
It was
that's
so
what it's about.
so I was hunting with someone else, in the last couple weeks as well. And it was so funny because he wanted to see me shoot something and I wanted to see him shoot something. And we had to stop and laugh at one point, and we're like, you take the shot. No, you take the shot. And then the deer, the deer actually got away because we
Yeah, he's
couldn't.
like, well, if nobody's going to shoot me, I'm going to skip out the back door.
Kind of pretty much, one of us must have made a noise or it picked up something, and we just kind of looked at each other and laughed because we were so excited for the other person to try to get on the animal. But you know what? The stalking part of it and just getting out there and having a good time, that whole day was awesome.
Yeah.
We stalked an animal, we got on something, and then we just couldn't figure out who was shooting.
I actually love that. And that's something you're
oh,
never going to forget either. Like, that's an experience that you're like, well, do you remember that one time that we were out there and we almost got it, but neither one of us pulled the trigger?
right. And even now I smile and laugh about it. And you're right, it's something I won't ever forget. I was like, and then I was like, I screwed it up for you. And then he was like, no, you didn't. I screwed it up for you. And I'm like, what? Because it was that kind of a camaraderie. It's like, I really thought I screwed up the hunt because I saw him pull an arrow. And then he pulled it from his quiver, but he didn't knock it. And I froze because I didn't want to move because I thought he had it on, he was going to pull. And he actually hesitated so that I could get up to where he was so that I could try to take a shot. So it was just kind of one of those things. And, at first I was a little upset because I really thought I screwed it up for him. And he's like, no, you didn't screw it up at all. He says, if anything, I screwed up because I should have done this. And,
Aw.
so we talked about it and we laughed about it. And it was
So
just an awesome day.
next time you rock, paper, scissor in the truck before you get there.
Exactly. So, it's just it's a great, but, just spending that quality time out with somebody else, seeing somebody else's perspective on hunting is awesome.
Yes.
Because it's different than how I grew up with my family, because everybody has their own method of hunting and there's
Mhm.
different kinds of hunters. Some people are just out there to be in the woods and some are out there for that trophy. And I'm somewhere in between.
Mhm.
I love it out there and the experience, but I do want to get something into the freezer because that is my main meat source for the year.
Yeah, I actually just talked to one of my really good friends. She's in Kansas, and she was telling me like, you need to get your buck tag and come hunt with me. And I said, I don't think I've shot a buck since my oldest son's been born, and he just turned 14 this year. And I said, and it's not for a lack of opportunity, but like I remember like just a few years ago, I had a beautiful buck come out and came right under my stand, not once, but twice, and I didn't pull the trigger. And I actually had video and I sent it to one of my friends that was the landowner, and he's like, "Why didn't you shoot that?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to take my kids out this weekend, so if I shoot him, he's for sure not going to be here this weekend."
Right.
So, and like, this year we have a beautiful 10 point and a 12 point, either that we've seen in person or on camera on the farms that I hunt. And I'm the only one that deer hunts them. So I'm like, man, this might be a year that I take a buck. But if it doesn't fall, I feel like the word trophy hunting has this really bad stigma. And I've talked about it on social media before, but even I used to have a bad stigma about like the word trophy hunter, but I've
Yeah.
always considered myself a meat hunter. And a few years ago, my taxidermist and I had a conversation. He's like, now, Felicia, I think that you have this backwards. And he goes, and here's why. He goes, yes, I understand that you're a meat hunter. But when was the last time you shot a buck? When was the last time you did this? And I was like, well, I haven't.
Right.
And he's like, and why not? And I said, because I haven't found one that I felt big enough to take. And he goes, okay, then you're a trophy hunter. But it
Right.
just means that you're willing to shoot a doe if it's not a trophy and you're willing to let those young bucks walk. And that's
Right.
just good management. He said,
Right.
so that whole bad stigma that trophy hunting has is so backwards because those trophy hunters, they're out willing to take the meat and they're out making better management and they're out, spending the money on coolers and camouflage and, building that, boosting that eco or the economy in certain areas. And they're going to pay
Right.
that taxidermist. Where when you have those quote unquote meat hunters, those are the ones that fall under the line of like almost poachers because they don't care whether it's a spike or if it's, a button buck, they're still going to shoot it just because it's the first thing that walks out and there's meat in the
Right.
freezer. And I was like,
Right.
well, hold on. It's not fair to harp on them either, because in my opinion, like what happens when you have someone that maybe they were only able to get out 1 or 2 days in their season and they're not out 60 days of their season like I am. Like
Right.
whatever steps out might be what they need to feed their family. And who are you or I to judge that?
Right.
So I've always came to the mentality of like, if it's a trophy to you, it's a trophy to me.
Right.
And you just don't know what someone has or what opportunities they have. And I don't know. I think that it's very interesting that we fall into so much judgment in the outdoor community against one another. Like we get enough from PETA and the greenies that we don't need to be doing it to each other. We need to just congratulate
Exactly.
and celebrate successes.
And everything, and more things are successes that people don't realize are successes. Just like I said, didn't get an animal yesterday, but it was still a success.
Right.
And,
And celebrating that is a big deal too.
it is. And normally, I guess I'm a trophy hunter to an extent, but when it comes down to it, it's about putting meat in the freezer.
Mhm.
Because the first part of the season, I am going to look for that, big buck. But if I had had a 2-point step out where I had a clean shot on it, I would have taken it. I've been on a couple of 2-point bucks. And
Mhm.
I'm not looking at just the horns when I'm looking at an animal. I'm looking at the size of the animal.
The neck and everything like that.
Yeah.
yeah, age, because you might have just bad genetics.
Right. And I've shot a number of 2 points. I have a actually really nice 2 point hanging on my wall,
Hmm.
European mount. And I got that back in 2012. And you know what? That sucker field dressed at over 200 pounds.
Oh, wow. Now,
Yeah.
what is that? Is that mule deer?
Yes, that was a mule deer.
Okay.
Um,
Because you guys,
for
you have whitetail
yes, we do.
where you're at?
Um,
So that's why I was like, but when you said 200 pounds, I'm like, I'm gonna go with muley there.
yeah, the muley is going to be, and he was probably, he was a mountain buck.
Hmm.
And the mountain bucks are going to be heavier as far as mule deer go than the lower land mule deer, typically, anyways.
Hmm.
Um, I call them generally a migratory mule
Hmm.
because those big mountain bucks, they're migrating through the mountains a lot.
Hmm.
And they're typically heavier than the ones you're going to find down on the alfalfa field. And then the
Now,
white tails, yeah, go ahead.
the muley, they hang out in the sage quite a bit as well, right?
Different areas they will.
Okay.
And there's a difference between your sage muleys and your alfalfa muleys and your mountain muleys. Um, I've seen the whole range of different habitats for a mule deer, and it's funny because they have their own distinct personality, I guess is the best way to put it.
Hmm.
But the meat has a different flavor as well.
Yeah, I've heard that and you can correct me, I've never harvested a mule deer, but um I've been told that like when you hunt a mule deer that mainly forages on sage, that you can almost taste the sage in their meat.
Oh, definitely.
So
Definitely. It,
that's,
it, it does have a sage taste to it. I know some people, they won't even hunt them if they're in the sage because they
oh,
don't want
really?
that. Yeah, they don't want that flavor to them.
Okay.
And I like the mountain mules because they're just a bigger body. You get more meat off of them.
Hmm.
But the ones off the alfalfa fields are almost, I guess the best way to put it is they are a sweeter meat. They're
Hmm.
still lean, but it's just, I don't know. It's like just a hint. Sweeter is the best way to put it, I think. It does have a different flavor to the meat. Some people think they're more tender because they've been, like veal. They're not doing a whole lot of work and they're just staying on the alfalfa field. So they're tender. But a lot of it is in the processing and the field dressing. Um, there's a lot that goes into it, whether your meat's good or not.
Right. Yeah.
Did they
And that's with most animals, that it's all in what they're eating, how you process it, of what you're going to gain out of it.
exactly? Um, it's just kind of crazy of all the difference. I still prefer elk out of everything.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but so in Wyoming, another thing that's kind of interesting is you can get your general deer, and then that's going to be for buck, whether it's a whitetail or a mule deer. But in some areas, you can actually use that general tag for a doe as well, for a whitetail doe.
Hmm.
So it's going to be either mule deer buck, a whitetail buck, or a whitetail doe. And then after that, you can actually buy over the counter whitetail doe tags,
Hmm.
and you can get multiple.
How many are you allowed in Wyoming?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I have to double check the regs, but last year, and I think this year too, is up to 5 whitetail doe tags per person per day.
Per day?
Per day
Wow.
until they run out of their quota.
Okay.
Each area has its own quota on those whitetail doe tags.
Hmm.
And last year, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember how many animals I shot last year. I got 3
It's a good
antelope.
problem to have.
It is 3 antelope. I got my mule deer buck, and then I think I had 6 whitetail doe tags.
Oh,
I might
wow.
have. Well, I actually think I had more tags than that, but I know I put 6 whitetails into the freezer.
And did you get an elk last year?
I did not.
Okay.
It was, I was still hunting most of the lowland last year. I wasn't hiking as much. I was I was still recovering a little bit from that knee surgery.
Hmm.
It took a lot longer on that knee surgery than I expected. And the first year was completely out. Last year I was hiking a little bit more, but I was still doing mostly lowland hunting.
Hmm.
Um, I had a whole bunch of life changes happen. So that I had a lot of things that I was dealing with where I just didn't have the time to dedicate that I wanted to.
Sure. But
So
this year
I
you're
was,
gonna kick it off full swing back into it?
oh yeah, I've already, yeah, I've already been, camping in the back country basically, 3 days at a time for the elk hunting. Um, I've done a lot more scouting this year. Um, which is, it's also a balance. If you've got a garden and when it's harvest time on your garden, it's also the beginning of hunting season.
Sure. Yes.
So it's like you got to figure out what's important and the balances to get things done. Because if it's just you, you're busy all the time.
Yes. Yes. I know last year, I went to Africa last year in the end of August, and I was like super paranoid with my garden. I called somebody to watch my garden while I was gone because I was like, I'm going to be gone for 9 days, and there's certain things that need to be harvested while I'm gone, or certain things that need to be overwatered or underwatered, or you
Yep.
know, because I have a very large garden in my backyard, and I'm like, I literally like I needed a pet sitter, but at the same time I had to call someone else that knew about plants just to take care of my garden. So I took that into consideration this year with going back to Africa and how long I was gone, that
Yep.
like I wasn't going to plant the certain things that needed to be harvested during that time of the year while I was gone because I didn't want to just waste certain things and I knew they wouldn't get the attention they needed.
And that's exactly it. I mean, I don't mind going on trips and doing stuff, but then I've got to think about my chickens. I got to think about the plants, the garden.
Hmm.
And some of it has irrigation, but not all of it.
Hmm.
And, even on the bees, okay, if I'm going to be gone for more than a certain period of time, I got to consider even the beekeeping because you're supposed to actually inspect your bees every week to 10 days.
Okay.
And, as the summer goes on, you got to watch to make sure your bees aren't outgrowing their hive.
Hmm.
And so anytime I was going to be gone for an extended period of time, I always did my bee inspection like the day before.
Right. And
Because
it's
then
just being mindful of that.
it is. And there's a lot of things. Even getting into beekeeping, that was not something I would have originally done on my own. But my employer asked me if it would be something I would be interested in because it would help with pollination on the fruit trees.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was like, sure, why not? So I kind of just dive into it. And it was like, you know what? Beekeeping is addictive. I love it. Um, and
Do
there's
you
a
yield a lot of
peacefulness.
honey?
It's crazy you ask that because I only started with bees in April
Hmm.
and we harvested over 40 pounds of honey off of the 2 hives. And
Wow.
that is like unheard of for a first year. Usually, the first year, and sometimes not even the second year, do you harvest honey on a new hive because they
Wow.
have to build everything. So
Hmm.
I got this package of bees that I had to pick up in Billings. And so I had to drive them back in my back seat. And that was a little unnerving.
Sure.
And the hives that I had were brand new hives. And so there was no comb built yet. And so the first 2 weeks that I had them, I was feeding them. And thankfully, it was kind of warming up. Actually, I probably did it for the first month. I had
And
to
what do
feed
you
my
feed
bees.
bees?
You believe it or not, sugar water.
Okay, almost like you do for hummingbirds.
Exactly the same
Okay.
thing. It's the same 1-to-1. In the spring, you can do the 1-to-1.
Hmm.
There's no food coloring, obviously, which isn't good for
Right.
your hummingbirds either.
Right. A lot of people don't
Um,
understand that dyeing that water red is more of for you to check the levels, and it's completely unnecessary.
it's totally unnecessary.
Yes.
But so it's the same simple syrup, and you have feeders for your bees. You can actually have one that goes right inside the hive, and they can climb in there and get their sugar source. So in order to build honeycomb, it uses a lot of energy on the bee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they actually use a lot of the honey that they're making just to build more honeycomb. And my bees had no honeycomb whatsoever when they started. And so that first month, it was really important that I fed them so that they had the energy to build the honeycomb, so they had a place to put the honey as well as the brood. So your baby bees.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it was unheard of to have honey harvested off of my bees that first year.
Yeah, and then like you said, to harvest 40 pounds of honey
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. What do you do with all that honey? You sell it? Does your employer sell it? Like, what do you do with that
Well,
type of honey?
like this year, most of it went to gifts to friends and family and personal use.
Well, you
You
can
know,
always mail me some honey.
well, I'm sure you probably will be getting some. I actually have a care package set for another person that we both know, that I'm getting ready to mail out to New York, and I'm
Oh,
sending them. I made some habanero honey,
oh, he's gonna love that.
so you know
I
who
already
I'm
know who
talking
you're
about.
talking about. Yes, I do.
So I'm actually sending out, one of my salsa verdes and one of my regular salsas, and then some apple jam for his mom. And
Oh,
then I'm sending out the habanero honey, and I'm sending it out on Monday. And, so, but yes, I would be happy to share. And if you want habanero honey, better let me know now so I can make sure I have some made.
I will tell you, my son, my oldest, he loves anything hot, spicy. When he was 2 years old, I tell the story all the time. He was 2 years old. We sat down at a Mexican restaurant and we ordered our food. And he says, Mom, I just want a bowl of jalapenos.
Oh
And
my
I was
goodness.
like, well, I mean, if that's what you want. And he ordered us, I think it was like a taco and an entire bowl of jalapenos. And he told the lady, the waitress, he said, can you leave the seeds in them? And
Oh
he
my
sat
goodness.
and he ate a whole bowl of jalapenos. And I'm like, am I a bad mom right now? Like I had to contemplate my life choices and I'm letting my son do this, but that boy will eat anything and the hotter the better. I took him on a duck hunt in Arkansas and the boys, some of the veterans we were with, it was a veteran youth hunt, and some of the veterans we were with they were from Louisiana and they brought up stuff to do a crawfish boil.
Oh,
I
nice.
am a northern girl, so that is like a crawfish boil to me is not a spicy dish. Oh
Oh,
boy, they had it so hot that like just touching my lips, it felt like I had a chemical burn that I could not eat
oh
it. I don't do
no.
spicy. But my son, he sat there and he shucked those crawfish and he was eating the corn and the onion, like he was eating the onion like an apple and eating the potatoes and everything out of it and the
Love
boudin
it.
and sausage in it. And he sat there and mauled, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 crawfish. And I just I only ate two, and I was done. I was like, I can't do this. It's too hot. And he just kept like just shelling
Going.
it in. And I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh, this kid
Well,
isn't going to have a gut by the time he's 18.
right. And see, and that's the funny thing is because I'm probably one of the I like more spice in my diet than most of my family.
Hmm.
And I grew up in the Pacific Northwest with lots of, seafood and everything, but I had some Southern influences, you know, growing up. My father's father was actually originally from Florida, Georgia area.
Oh, okay.
And so I never realized some of the food I had growing up was actually Southern stuff. You
Right.
know,
You had that Georgia heat in there.
right? You get that Georgia heat, fried frog legs and
Hmm.
you
We
know,
love
I
our frog legs.
oh, I love my frog legs. I'll tell you what. It was so funny because was recently told that we had, bullfrogs here in Wyoming and I was like, "Really? Where? Huh? What?" I went out gigging and I was like, "These people don't know what bullfrogs are. Those are just pond frogs."
Right.
And I had to go back to Game and Fish because I had it all set up with them. Because
Hmm.
actually, I'd heard from them as well that there was bullfrogs here. Well, it's an invasive species here.
Hmm.
And I went back to him. I said, "Who told you you have bullfrogs? Because those are not bullfrogs." I was like, you guys don't know. I said, your biologist needs to go back to school for frogs.
We have bullfrog legs that'll put chicken legs to shame.
I know. Isn't that awesome?
Yes, yes.
I
We
miss.
eat that's a big dish for our family, like a tradition for a lot of like our birthdays or Thanksgiving or even Christmas. We'll have frog legs.
I'll tell you what, you send me frog legs, I'll send you the honey.
Deal. Deal.
So, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean, frog legs, rabbit. I grew up, my family was very resourceful, and I think I just picked up all those little habits. And as I'm getting older, I'm bringing that all back, and hopefully I'll get my grandkids going with it as well.
yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love the idea of carrying that on to generations to come, like instilling it in your grandkids or,
Mhm.
with me, with my children or with these women out there who are bringing their families. We have a couple girls on staff that started with us fresh last year that came out, and they are avid hunters now, and they're now getting their spouses. Like when they came to us, they weren't big hunters and their spouses didn't hunt, and now they're all like all in. Every time we have an event, they're signing up, and I
That's
absolutely
wonderful.
love seeing like the family as a whole getting out together, hosting events where it's okay to bring your grandkids or your kids or your
Yeah,
husband. Us as women of the
definitely.
wild, it's a heavy perception that our only focus is females. And it's like, no, we have that motto is you can take a man hunting and there's nothing against that man. But if you've taken a woman hunting, you have now sparked something inside of her where she's going to go tell all of her friends. She's going to bring her family. She's going to bring her kids. Once you involve a woman, you've sparked this community at that point because they want to share that with other people. And like you said, taking your friend with you, you want to share those experiences with other people and you
Yep.
enjoy the camaraderie just as much as the hunting. So it becomes, who can I take with me to share this experience with?
And that's just it, and I want to get people to understand the whole process, not just, the kill, because there's so much to it, and every aspect is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're
Absolutely.
getting you're getting fresh air, you're enjoying quality time with people, you know, where your food is coming from.
You're getting exercise. You're not sitting
You're
on a
getting
couch.
exercise. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
I
because
absolutely love that.
my friend is going to get her son and daughter into it, and her daughter's 12 going 13. And we're hoping we can really get her out there because she just needs to be outside more. She's gotten into that, VR video game stuff,
Mhm.
and she doesn't get any exercise.
No.
She'll
Yeah.
go to the Y and hang out with her friends and do some stuff there, but let's get them out in nature because it's so much better for the mind.
Yes. Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
anytime outdoors is much more better served than sitting in front of a screen.
Yep. I was never so happy as to go up on the mountain and turn my phone off for 3 days.
Oh,
And you
it's the
know what?
best.
It was. I dreaded coming back. I didn't want to hear my phone.
Yeah, we did a 12-day stint in Southwest Texas in the mountains,
Okay.
and I had no service, and I was completely okay with that. And I honestly I felt like almost anxiety and overwhelmed when I came back to have to deal with like social media and text
Yep.
messages and phone calls again. I'm like, I liked this better before.
Can't we go back to the 80s when it was still a phone that you had to dial in your house?
I feel like I was raised in I was born in the wrong generation to begin with. So
Yep.
that's a whole nother topic. But Terry, it has been absolutely amazing talking to you. We've came
Well,
up to
thank
about
you.
our hour, and
Okay.
I have a big question that I love to ask at the end of the podcast,
Okay.
especially with this new season kicking off. So I know that you do a lot of big game and you've
Yep.
done a lot of really great things that most people have not yet experienced or may never experience. But I have to know if you had one like bucket list animal to hunt, what would it be?
Moose.
Moose. Oh, you said that without hesitation. Is there a certain like area state that you would want to do them in?
Believe it or not, right here where I'm at,
You
I
guys,
have seen,
that's how does your
we have
tags
some,
work for moose there?
well, it's kind of a one in a lifetime thing. They're not easy to get,
Hmm.
but I've seen some amazing moose here.
Is
And
that a point system you put in for?
well, it is right now. and I don't have enough points. I'm sure that's part of it. Wyoming might be changing their point system and going back to just random draw. And
Mhm.
I kind of hope they do. Because I've seen, it's just, to me, it feels like a lot of more people from out of state get moose tags than the locals do.
Now, how many points do you have to draw, or do you have to draw moose? Because we are like that here in Michigan for elk, is it's a point system and it's
Okay.
a once in a lifetime tag. So I'm very familiar with the way that that works, but I don't know how your moose system works in
You
Wyoming.
know, to be honest with you, I'm not real familiar with it. Um, I've only put in for it once, and obviously I didn't draw. So I'm going to be from here out, especially with the moose that I saw this summer and fall. I'm definitely going to be putting on in for those tags from here out. Um, so I just don't know how the point system. I need to look into it more.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have that for bear and we also have it for elk. And I put in every year for the last several years for both. And I've never put in for the draw. I've only put in for the points.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm at the point where like I know I want to do it, but like if I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it in my home state, I want to be able, like, for my bear, I'm super picky. Like I want a bear that's over 200 to 300 pounds. I don't want like 150 bear, and I want to be able to full body mount him. And my house is about to outdo Cabela's shortly. So I'm like, I don't have somewhere to put a full body bear in this house. So that, like, those points are going to keep racking until I'm ready to full
Right.
body mount a bear. And I'm in a house that I could do that with.
Right.
Um, because I still have, gosh, nine animals coming home from Africa still on top of everything else that's in my house. So I'm like, I don't want to put a full body bear, especially when that's 300 pounds in my house. And I don't want to just rug one. So that's my thought process and mentality behind it. But like an elk, it's something that I want the full experience and I want to be able to afford it and take the time off to enjoy it. And that I just keep letting the points rack. And I'm like, I'll do places that are OTC until then, till I'm ready to draw my points and actually put in for them. And it'll be a guaranteed tag at that point.
That would be great. So
Yes. I love that though. But do you have, I know that you're not a super tech savvy person, but
right.
especially with your connections now that you're a part of Extreme Backcountry, do you have any plugs that you want to fill people in of where they can find you on social media or even find Backcountry?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm still getting, started with it. I just have my own personal basic page. I only have Facebook at this point, so I'm having
Mhm.
to upgrade everything. Uh, like I said, just the different game calls I'm learning. I don't even know all the names of them yet.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing that sticks in my mind really is that upwind scent
Yes.
lock. That is
Yes.
definitely, the extreme backcountry outdoor adventures, TV. If people want to look at that, there's some great shows up on YouTube. Um, and you can connect with them on Facebook as well. I tell you, it's been a lot of fun, and I see a lot of fun things in my future. And I want to move to more where I can hunt more for fun, and as well as I always dreamed of making hunting a living,
Mhm.
and for the first time in my life, I see that down the road as being a possibility.
Absolutely. I've always had the mentality of passion could pay the bills, but you start to get to a point where that starts to become a reality.
Yeah. And so
Yes.
that's kind of where I'm trying to move towards is I want to be able to I'm passionate about hunting, and I would love for it to be able to pay the bills.
Right. Well, and they can find you at Teri Smith on Facebook, or they can find you under Extreme Backcountry Outdoor Adventures on Facebook as well, with some
Right.
upcoming things there. So I want to thank you for your time because it's been absolutely so much fun talking to you and learning about you. But I'm very excited to see what the future holds for you with Extreme Backcountry.
Well, and if you're ever out here in Wyoming, I'd love to take you hunting.
Oh, absolutely. You just say the word, I'm in.
Well, it's the easy thing that I could get you out on a hunt this year without a draw is the whitetail doe tags.
Yes,
Even being out of state, they're not terribly expensive, and you can buy them over the counter.
I'm in.
Well,
I
come on
love
out.
experience new places.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and this has been a new experience that I've really enjoyed.
Absolutely. I appreciate having you on and getting to build a friendship and connection with you.
Thank you. And likewise.